Morning, guys. Today we're going to talk about language and the understanding of language and how essence and energy pertains to God. Now, a lot of people think this is an orthodoxy issue, but it really isn't. It's just specific language that talks about our soul or our spirit in the form of what holds our whole soul or spirit, which is the host. Okay. In the Bible, we see in the seraphim. Okay. The seraphim are around the throne of God singing, "Holy, holy, holy, Lord of hosts. Heaven and earth is filled with your glory." The host is our souls, our spirits, okay? God's glory, his essence. What houses that essence? Okay, it's no different than this body is a salt sack. Our, quote, spirit is within our body, two-natured, okay? But it's also the essence of life, essence. Energy is the action in the physical world. Okay, this is important to understand because this is how the darkness also works, but we're going to talk about the light aspect of it. Okay, God's light. Most times the darkness mocks God's glory. Okay, we call our spirit our soul. Okay, our soul. All right, now what is this? It's a shoe, but what's on the bottom? The soul. You see, that's the mockery. You are tramping on the soul. I know most people don't see that, but that's how the darkness works. They associate the soul with under someone's heel. Okay, that's how it is looked at. But you see, this is the host that houses the soul, and yet on this, it's the complete reversal. Okay, in the language, Lord of hosts, host is in the heavenly realms the essence of God. Okay, in the physical world, it is the essence that is housed, if that makes sense. Okay. Roughly just after World War II, up to the 60s and 70s, the Holy Ghost was a very common phrase for the older generation. What is the Holy Ghost? Well, we see it as the spirit, ghost. That's what it means. But it had a negative connotation across the pond. Europe, England, etc. But it almost is a slang term, ghost, God's host. But you see, they lost the aspect of God and made it bad. A spirit, an evil spirit. That again is a mockery, just like the shoe. The shoe is a mockery of the soul. And I know that's hard for people to understand. But that's how everyday life, the language is used against us in our innocence and in our ignorance. Okay, Lord of hosts, host. Okay, in the Hebrew, you can see it in the Septuagint and the Book of Enoch. Oh no, don't talk about the Book of Enoch. It's not canon. But it talks about the angels disrobing to come to earth. Okay, in other words, shedding their heavenly garbs to come down to earth as a messenger. Very important, very important. Most people don't understand that aspect. The fallen angels, or the the dark ones, they were cast down. They were cast down from the heavens, okay? In other words, they were declothed. They were no longer allowed their heavenly garments. They were stripped from them. And in this world, a quote ghost must embody a host. That's why devils possess the host for the soul or spirit. An evil spirit wants your spirit. The demons want your spirit, soul. Okay, I always associate the spirit and the soul, where spirit is here physically, and in the heavens it is a soul, if you will. Because, and why I use that is just kind of the language. The soul, our soul is His, God's. It is solely His. And again, this is essence and energy, but this is literally about God's creation. The bread and wine is the what do they call the bread in the religions that use the bread and wine? They call it the host. Why? Because when they do the prayers, they embody, through God's grace, God's essence into the host, the bread. The bread has always been important in the Bible. If you understand Bethlehem, understand the Last Supper, you understand God's essence and energy. It's not a complicated thing once you see it. But this is kind of why they got rid of the word ghost, because it had a negative connotation after the First World War and the Second World War. Because we look at it as PTSD, they were haunted by a quote ghost, or a embodiment of a soul. A lot of the men, women, the army, they've seen so many terrible things. And host also is about taking root in the language. It becomes, not transformed, but becomes temporarily. Again, this is why it's important to understand the language. The very language we speak, we don't understand. Now, essence and energy is very important in understanding the darkness. So I wanted to get that out to you. You know, I'm sorry I wake up this way. I can't help it. You know, at least hopefully that gives you some idea of how God created that. That's that essence. In God's world, it is it's solid in God's world. In this world, it is an essence. It is a ghost, a mist. God's breath, mist. Hope you understand that. Anyway, that's kind of the purpose, to understand, but also to give you an idea of how important the bread and wine is, how important the understanding the name that's right there in the name, the host, the bread offered in a church is known as the host, and they transform the body and blood, just like Jesus, into the host, the essence. We take it for granted. Anyway, hope that helps you. Talk to you soon.